Hey, the Chicago Bears, they just got some really good news on the trade front, and it couldn't come at a better time. There's been a ton of chatter about the Bears possibly trading for Myles Garrett. You've seen it, it's been everywhere. I mean, I love the player. I'm sure you do too, but it's just not a good fit for numerous reasons. And with that, there's growing belief that's really getting a lot of traction that the real target for the Chicago Bears should be Cincinnati Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson. And for Bears fans, consider this an actual real opportunity. We could be looking at Sweat and Hendrickson pinning their ears back, getting after opposing quarterbacks on the regular. Just would be a really good sight to see as fans, right? And it's also a real possibility if the Bears want it to be. Let's go to what was said on the Pat McAfee show. And this is really interesting for several reasons. So on the show today, Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson, he said that he needs a new contract or he wants to just get traded out of Cincinnati. So three things here: likely availability, elite performance. Hendrickson has made the Pro Bowl in each of his first 4 seasons with the Bengals, coming off his second straight season with 17 and a half sacks. Now, that's an NFL leading mark in 2024. I believe it's 3 more than what Myles Garrett had. And also, there's a bargain price. I'm going to get to that. He's got 1 year left on his contract in Cincinnati. And really, this is what the real thing is on the Pat McAfee show today. It looks like there's a lot of trouble in communication between him and the team. I think this well's been soured here. It doesn't sound like the Bengals are willing to pay up for his services either. This is straight from Trey. I would have preferred to have it heard. I would have preferred to have heard it differently than my dad texting me about it. And he's referring to some remarks made by Duke Tobin from Cincinnati. He just made some recent comments about his contract situation, but he never talked to Hendrickson about it before. And this is kind of a no-no. Tobin acknowledged that Hendrickson deserves a raise, that he deserves an extension, but essentially said it takes 2 to tango. This is directly from him. Has he earned a pay raise and a bump in the form of an extension? He has. And this is the Bengals director of player personnel, Duke Tobin. We're cognizant of that, and we'll give that to him. But whether we agree on what that looks like, that's to be determined. We can't have guys at the top of the payroll in every position, right? We'll do what we can. We'll do what we feel is right. And we will try to get Trey re-signed. It's not giving anybody an extension. It's agreeing with somebody on an extension. And I mean, that feels kind of tone deaf if you want to bring this player back. It's exceedingly rare, right? It's so rare when an NFL team can make a value trade for an elite performer at a premier position. And this is exactly where the Chicago Bears find them. And we've got our new defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, right? He has shown that he has a great feel for the right fit at defensive end. We're looking at when he was with the Broncos, when he was with the Raiders. He drafted Khalil Mack. We know him well, and also Von Miller. But when he was in New Orleans, there's not a doubt that he values Trey Hendrickson, what he brings to the table. He played a huge role in drafting him. And now he'll be available to get in his new defensive line in Chicago. Now we're looking at the offensive line. I get it. Number one priority. To fix it, the Bears need to use free agency effectively, but they also have to draft effectively, and they have to have draft flexibility. And this is what I like about this. A close second to that is the defensive line, more specifically, finding the right bookend opposite Montez Sweat. And there's also the matter of draft flexibility. I mean, it's all over. Hey, we're getting Trey Smith. We're getting Trey Smith. Trey Smith is not available on the market right now. Kansas City might move heaven and earth to keep them on their team. I think I would if I was managing that team and I had Patrick Mahomes. It's not guaranteed that we're going to get him. So if a guy like Trey Smith isn't available on the market, we're looking at that we might have to get our stud on the offensive line in the draft. And then we also need a defensive end as well. So we need the flexibility to be able to draft the best player available. We don't want to be forced into taking an offensive lineman if we'd rather have the defensive lineman and vice versa. But anyways, this just provides a lot picking up Hendrickson. The Chicago Bears definitely have a pass rush problem. Aside from Sweat, No edge defender on the roster capable of striking any fear in the opposing quarterbacks, I believe, in the present form of this defensive line. I know a lot of this was affected by Billings getting hurt. Things kind of fell apart after that. But I think the problems are a little more robust than that. Sweat took a definite step back in 2024, and that's directly following his Pro Bowl campaign. Sweat led the Bears in sacks last season, but it was only with 5.5. Then you're looking at Jervon Dexter, our 3 tech, right? He was second on the team with 5. And then the next closest edge rusher on the roster, that was DeMarcus Walker at only 3.5. Like, that's not enough. And Bleacher Report's NFL scouting department, they put together a trade proposal on Monday that could solve Chicago's problem without really breaking the bank in terms of trade capital. The trade. The Bears would send their 2025 third-round pick, that's number 72 overall, and that would go to the Bengals in exchange for the contract-seeking defensive end. And this is a direct quote. Ben Johnson brought on Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator. Hendrickson's initial breakout campaign happened in the 2020 season in Allen's defense, 13.5 sacks. It would be fun to see the veteran help Allen bring his defense to Chicago. So kind of looking at our cap space, and then we'll talk about this trade. The Bears are projected to have roughly 63 million in cap space, but that's before any cuts. Look for them to cut probably Ryan Bates, probably Gerald Everett, maybe someone else. They can add at least 10 million more onto this cap space. That give them absolutely plenty of room to sign Hendrickson, do a top of the market extension, and that could easily surpass 22, 23, maybe get up to $25 million annually. Now, the Bears already have one of the league's highest paid defensive ends on their books. That's Montez Sweat. He's making about $24.5 million annually. But if you think about it, taking a swing on Hendrickson, that would absolutely transform this whole defensive front. It would make them an immediate threat, an immediate strength of this team. And the Bears really could justify giving up a third rounder for Hendrickson. I mean, they have the 10th overall pick, 2 high-end seconds. That's number 39 and 41. And this is all to address the roster needs for this team that still need to be filled. So let's kind of think about it a little differently as well. Let's look at like our window, like the Bears' perceived window for contention. I think that factors into the decision as well. And GM Ryan Poles, he might very well think now's the time for significant defensive investments with Caleb Williams on his rookie deal. And this is what makes this such a nice situation for the Bears, because Bengals, they're going to make him available because these guys are up against the cap. Hendrickson himself, he's owed $21 million this year. He also wants a new contract. The guy's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So Chicago will likely only have to give up only their third rounder in this scenario. What if it's a little more, right? What if it's just a second rounder? At worst, maybe a second and a fifth. I think that's a little too much, but let's look at our draft picks here. We have the 10th overall. We have 2 seconds, number 39, number 41. We have a third. We have a fifth. We have a 6th and 2 sevenths. And once again, looking at the Bengals cap situation, and this is why I really believe that Trey Hendrickson is going to be available, because they have a lot of mouths to feed here. The Bengals, it's really hard not to make the playoffs when you have a guy like Joe Burrow, but this isn't a really well-managed team. They're up against the cap. And also they kind of have a reputation for being cheap. So let's look at this here. Quarterback Joe Burrow. He just signed a $275 million deal. The team used the franchise for wide receiver T. Higgins. They're going to have to make a decision on him. If they decide to sign Higgins, that's a projected market value north of $100 million. You've got Jamar Chase. He's in line for upwards of $135 million on a 4-year stretch. And that's after capturing the receiver triple crown. Just a crazy year. That means he led the league in receiving yards, touchdowns, and receptions. Now we're looking at Hendrickson's 17.5 sacks. That led the NFL in a wide margin. The values there, 3.5 sacks more than Cleveland Browns defensive end Myles Garrett, and he's the one that's getting all the press right now. So if we think about it, Hendrickson's also going to turn 31 late next season. So that kind of brings his price down a little bit. Spot Track projects his market value at about 22.5 million annually. That's over a new 2-year contract that the Bears would give him. And that would prove out of the Bengals range if they bring back Chase and Higgins, plus they're paying Burrow. It's just a lot for Cincinnati to stomach. Now, I think Cincinnati, they're going to be really willing to let another franchise like the Bears kind of step up and foot the bill for Hendrickson via a contract extension, but the contract extension wouldn't begin until his age 32 campaign. The Bears should definitely try to elbow their way to the front of the line with Hendrickson. It's a really good spot to be. Because Chicago, let's look at this broad view. They finished almost exactly in the middle of the league, 40 sacks last season. But if you add Hendrickson, complete chaos for opposing offenses. And we're also looking at, once again, a third rounder might not be enough to get a deal done. A second rounder definitely will be. And if you look back at the Washington Commanders, they were in a similar spot, kind of really cap strapped, trying to make the team broadly good. They had a lot of like splash contracts. The Bears flipped a second rounder to the Commanders for Sweat, and that was ahead of the 2023 trade deadline. And the Bears have 2 second rounders. So that's definitely within the realm of the possibility of what they should do. I don't want them to give up multiple firsts for Myles Garrett. Trey Hendrickson is a much better target. And right now, every word out of Cleveland is that the GM saying, absolutely, we will not trade Myles Garrett. All the chatter out of Cincinnati combined with what Trey Hendrickson said today, I think it's almost a done deal that he's going to be leaving town. So we're kind of looking at, on top of this, I think it's a good deal because the Bears could use one of these top assets to get Hendrickson, probably prove worth the price. And then we're going to the 2025 NFL draft. Ryan Poles has an opportunity to level up the pass rush with the 10th pick in the first round. Sure. But another option could eventually present itself in Hendrickson, and Ryan Poles could truly concentrate on this offensive line in the first round, maybe trade back into the first round. I think a really good option is to get one of the top offensive linemen, maybe the guy from LSU with our number 10, and then follow it up. And we're looking at a really good choice with Booker out of Alabama. Very well that he's projected to go in the top of the second round. We could have 2 really solid, really good guards. We could have a tackle as well if we choose to go that way. I think center is absolutely essential to pursue via free agency. If Trey Smith is there, like, awesome. Get both of the players. Still have the draft capital to move in any direction that you want to. But let's say Kansas City moves heaven and earth to keep Trey Smith in town. That means the Bears are looking at a fully different situation as far as getting after this team build in the right way. You guys, I want to hear in the comments, what do you think about the possibility of getting Trey Hendrickson? I think the draft compensation is absolutely fantastic. A little bit of a cap concern, but the Bears are in one of the best spots in the NFL right now, when you look at not only cap room, but cap flexibility and the contracts that we have on board. Ryan Poles has been so good at camp management. I think it's about time that we take advantage of that and spend some cash. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Bear down. And I think it's a great move. See ya.